Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy Sports, cryptocurrency, and blockchain fans. All of you are welcome to attend these podcasts. This is our Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Podcast number 7, where today we're going to be focusing on all things UFHL, because why not? I mean, we're in the thick of the NHL playoffs, UFHL Klein Cup playoffs wrapping up here, or soon to be wrapping up as well. And on today's podcast, we're going to do another segment of Meet the Owners with Ashley Murray of the Monarchs. We're going to do the last 2 weeks in the UFHL highlights. And we've been very busy, a lot of things going on. NHL, UFHL playoff pool picks, pro versus rookie. And, maybe pro versus rookie versus Ashley Murray. We might have to talk about that a little bit. Important dates coming up in the UFHL and UFFS as well. But hey, first of all, I want to kick things off by welcoming a special guest. And hello, Larry. Sorry, Larry. How are you doing?
Doing good, Darren. Good to be back. Looking forward to episode 7. Lots to cover this week.
And I cut off my introduction to Ashley Murray. So Ashley, good to see you. Great to have you on the UFFS podcast.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. I'm happy to be here.
Ashley, of course, the proud owner of the Monarchs, possibly representing the Legends Conference in the UFHL in the Klein Cup final, possibly. But I can tell you by the way it's looking and the way it's going, because I've been keeping tabs on this, I think you're going to be there. Are you excited?
I am, yeah. It's, I kind of put all my eggs into one basket. So I was a little bit worried when we were doing the playoff draft, but I think it was a good basket to put my eggs into. So I'm hoping to be in the final and then hoping that I'll come out with the win too.
You know, I can tell by the jersey you're wearing. I can't see all of it based on where the camera is, but I think I know where your eggs and what basket they're in. But and we'll get into the roster here in a little bit. But what I want to talk about first is I just kind of want to get to know you from a personal level a little better as well. So I know you live in Regina, Saskatchewan, which is essentially almost home to me. Larry, a good old Sask boy from way back too. So we have that connection for sure. But let's talk about so living in Regina, kind of born and raised, or ended up living there, or what's the story on Regina, Saskatchewan?
Born and raised, yeah, born here. Haven't ever moved away. Done a lot of traveling, but haven't lived that exciting of a lifestyle, or where I move in from place to place. I didn't move away for university. I know a couple people who have gone away, to play hockey different places, including Europe. I was never one of those people. I wish I would have done a stint maybe in Europe after university, but I finished university. I played hockey at the U of R, so finished my stint there and got an education degree. And I want to say that I was young and maybe not dumb, but I don't know. I wanted to just jump in right away and get teaching. I felt like, I better hurry up and get a job, which is silly because there'll always be jobs, but there's not going to be opportunities like playing hockey overseas and things like that. So yeah, I've been teaching since 2009, I guess. I teach high school math, and some business classes. So
Wow.
Yeah.
One of these math-minded people. So you must be right into hockey stats and understand this fairly well then. Statistics, analyzing.
I'd like to say that, but I don't know about the whole statistics side of it. I'm not a big follower. I mean, like you mentioned, you know the big teams and sort of the key players on those teams. I would say that that's me. My strategy in terms of the statistics going into this is looking at their fantasy points per games, sort of the trend line over the years to see, how many games have they been playing and what are their points that they're getting. And I just use that strategy, and so far it's turned out okay for me, I guess.
Well, in the inaugural year of UFHL, I think your strategy is working out just fine. So mother, obviously you have.
Yeah, I've got 2 kids.
Okay.
I have a boy who's 7, and he's I wouldn't say hockey obsessed, but he has big aspirations. He wants to play in the NHL, and we encourage him, he knows that it might not be possible. So he has a backup plan of, a builder is his new backup plan. So he wants to be a construction worker or build houses architect type thing. And of course he's loves Tampa, born into it, so he didn't really have a choice. And our daughter is 5, and she plays hockey too. We're not sure if she's into it. She likes it. We're just not sure if she likes it because her brother likes it and we like it. But she goes to the rink. She skates hard. She has fun, so we're okay with that.
Awesome. Mother, teacher. We all had those big dreams, didn't we, Larry?
We did, yeah. If you grew up in Canada, you grew up in the prairies, chances are you played hockey and you certainly dreamt of the NHL. And it's interesting to hear because obviously Ashley has some good bloodlines there with her father-in-law, as well as Al Murray, director of scouting and assistant general manager with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So having those connections always help in the hockey world too, as far as just getting some connections and getting some eyes on the players as they grow up. So certainly you have some scouting bloodlines in the family, and obviously Matt and Ashley both played as well. So it's a true hockey family, and it'll be interesting. I guess it's about 8 years until we can see Ashley's son on the blockchain if somebody registers him coming out of his WHL Bantam draft, if he progresses to that point.
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That'd be awesome, yeah.
That would be a highlight for sure. So Ashley, being a teacher, high school teacher, you obviously must have students that get right into sports and follow probably the NHL playoffs as well. I was always one of those kids always looking for that edge. I'd, try and, grease up the teacher whenever possible, especially as a math teacher, because I probably had to do as much greasing as I possibly could. So if I came into class wearing like any kind of Tampa Bay Lightning branding, would it help me?
It might. Yeah. Might earn you some brownie points for sure.
You're being very careful. Very, very nice political answer there.
That's right. Can't give away too many secrets.
Yeah, no, that's right. So what drew you to the UFFS UFHL?
It was actually Andrea. I guess she goes by Sister Andrea within the organization. Yeah. We played university hockey together, and we were actually roommates. I lived at home. She lived with my family, I guess, with my parents. It was actually post-university that she came and lived with us, but just have a great friendship. And she reached out to me. I guess it would have been in the fall, because there was a mock league. Yeah,
about when we launched. Yep. Yeah.
So she reached out, and she was reaching out to a few people, and I read it and just kind of scanned the email. I was like, I don't get this. I don't, and she reached out to me then through text message and was like, hey, we're really trying to get this thing going. Would you be interested in it? And I'm like, well, tell me more. I don't really understand what I'm supposed to be doing here. I don't understand this. And so she was kind enough to sort of walk me through everything and how it would work. So I did that. I wasn't expecting too much to come out of the mock league, but it ended up being me and her fighting for that first place. And I want to say she didn't beat me by a lot of points to win that round or that mock league. And the part that makes me a little upset about that, looking back, was I forgot to set my roster one day. And I had a goalie that was playing, and I think the goalie, I don't know, earned 11 points or something that night. And then when it came down to the end of the season, I ended up losing. So I was kind of kicking myself for that, but it was a good learning experience. So I was happy I did that, because then that kind of got me amped up and excited for the actual league starting up again. So I was just happy that she reached out to me. I'm happy that I took the chance, because I know there's a lot of our other friends that didn't take the chance. They thought the same as me. I don't get this. It sounds too complicated. But I think right now some of them are kind of feeling, oh man, I missed out, because they don't see being a scout as exciting as being a team owner. So
there's a lot of exciting aspects to this. It's a very unique experience. And I would say that it probably is a little bit complicated, because it's like owning and running an NHL franchise without having to spend $750 million, which I'm sure your father-in-law can probably appreciate. There is a lot of technicality to it. You have to be on the ball almost every day. And it doesn't help to have other people within your organization to help out. So I can see you had the competitive spirit, even participating in the mock draft. You were upset that you lost at the end, and you thought, man, I got the drive to take this thing on. I was in the mock draft too. I had no idea what I was doing, but really it was a practice thing for us to break down all the roadblocks initially before we really built this thing. and build it up so we could find our mistakes and get over it. So good to have you involved, man. This is really exciting, and to see this the inaugural year, and you're already kicking butt. The Monarchs, though, I mean, I've seen the logo, and the only thing I always try to take a guess, like, where does this come from? And really, I have no idea. But to me, it kind of synonymously goes together with royalty. That's the only thing I can think of, or maybe butterflies. And we raise monarch butterflies actually here. So tell us about the name and the logo.
So the Monarchs name actually came from my son's hockey team that I coached last year. So he was just in initiation, U7, but I was the head coach of that team, and their team name was the Monarchs. So once I found out that we had to have a name for our franchise, and initially I thought that, we were going to be associating the name with the player. So I had kind of these ideas around the name Kucherov, and then because during the mock draft, that was my guy. And so, after that, I'm like, well, I didn't really know where else to go with it. And then I just thought, you know what, we're just going with Monarchs. It's easy, has some meaning behind it. And so then I was trying to look into, again, you say like the royalty. I didn't want to do butterflies. So I was looking at some ideas for the logo to bring in some of that royalty piece. And then I thought, a crown. And then I don't know if there's another team that has the crown, but then I thought maybe it's too much like the LA Kings. So I went, did a Google search, trying to, because I'm not creative. Like you say, I'm more of a math person. I'm not the artsy, like, design person. And then Tony or Anthony, he actually reached out to me and helped me come up with the design. So we incorporated like a shield with the fleur-de-lis in there. And then the black, white, and blue are, symbolic or represent the Tampa sort of connection that I have there.
I think it would look great on a jersey. Larry, I don't know, she said a couple things, bringing in the royalty into it, and that's one thing that came to my mind. But already I think that she was, Ashley here was maybe forecasting, there was some foreshadowing, because she's potentially, she's probably going to be the queen of the Legends Conference and possibly going to be crowned. Well, I mean, I'm forecasting, I don't know, some things could change, but she could be crowned with the Klein Cup. So it kind of works.
Yes, I mean, you couldn't have scripted a better first season to kind of avenge the loss in the mock draft. There's a lot more at stake now, and certainly the Monarchs are looking like the team to beat in the conference finals, going into the final of the Klein Cup playoffs, and as well in the UFHL NHL playoff pool. It could be a clean sweep for Ashley Murray and the Monarchs. So looking very promising there. And it's funny because when Ashley mentioned putting all the eggs in one basket, the question that came to mind was just how nervous were you when Tampa Bay ended up matched up with Columbus again in the playoffs, and what happened last year? Because obviously if that series goes the other direction, the Monarchs may not be where they're at. Yeah,
that was huge. It was, in some ways, I was a little nervous about them being matched up against Columbus, but on the other hand, it was like, okay, this is redemption time. So it ended up being, working in my favor. And then I was a little worried about Boston too, because they tend to struggle. Boston's always been a physical team, but I think the Boston team has changed, over the last few years too. So, and then I was happy that they are matched up against the Islanders over Philly. I just felt like if they were matched up against Philly, it'd be more of a physical match. Again, I think with the Islanders, it's more of a finesse style game for both hockey teams. I was worried about the goaltending for the Islanders though, but that first night where they won 8-2, it was a little bit, kind of calmed me down a little bit, or gave, goaltending wasn't as big of a concern for me. And then, I think they got unlucky the other day when they lost, but I wasn't expecting them to sweep. You're not going to get to the conference final and complete a sweep, I don't think, in 4 games. So I have Tampa in 6, so there's still a lot of hockey to play. I'm hoping they go, sooner than that, but yeah.
I was wondering the same thing, Larry. I was seeing that she loaded up on Tampa, and that was my question too, is did you do the same thing, or would you have done the same thing last year? And obviously it didn't work out very good. And I think that's why I won my playoff bracket last year, because I did not choose Tampa Bay, and I chose most of the underdogs last year, and it was very successful. This year I did the same thing. It wasn't quite as successful, as you can tell in the playoff pool picks. I'm not doing very good, but yeah, you're really loaded up. And I also, were you able to grab a couple of loaners as well that are helping you out?
Yeah, the loaners were huge. And I actually have to give credit to my father-in-law here, because I went over, for the playoff pool, and I said, here's the guys. I said, I'm like, I know a lot of Tampa players. I know the big names from other teams. I'm like, but I don't know many of these other people. So I said, I need a goalie, because I had Bishop, but Bishop was hurt, and then Jerry, and he's, they're not there anymore. So I was going to take a goalie in my first round pick. And then he looked at things and he goes, oh no, he says, you got to take Pointer. He says, if Pointer's there, he's your number one guy for sure. I'm like, okay, good to know. So I was a little hesitant, because goalies can get you a ton of points in with the fantasy points. But now I'm like, thank goodness. I feel like my, the amount of points that I'm getting could have been drastically different if I didn't get Point as that first pick. So I kind of went that direction. And then my next round was, I was thinking, okay, now I have to get a goalie, but the goalies that we had discussed were already taken. And I don't know, Larry, if you remember where Hudobin went from Dallas, but he was mentioned, Al said, well, if Bishop's hurt, or if he's going to be hurt, Hudobin will be their goalie. So maybe he's one to take. But again, I don't know where he went. And in all the panic, because then I was thinking defenseman. I didn't have a lot of defensemen, and then I didn't get Hudobin. But if I did get him, I think I'd probably for sure have things, set to win. I don't want to say for sure, but it'd be pretty good, I think. So.
Pretty good consolation prize in the second round, though. You did go Dallas, and you got Miro Heiskanen, who's been one of the breakout stars of the playoffs. And it is interesting with Braden Point, because there was a great story making the rounds on Twitter and on the internet last week, just about how Al Murray, who still lives in Regina, how he really found Braden Point through the Moose Jaw Warriors system. And he was obviously a third round steal, but a neat story, and the connection as to Al Murray was a big fan of Braden Point going back to his 15-year-old affiliated player year, which is in the UFHL and in the scouting platform. That's as young as you can list prospects in our platform. So I'm sure if Al Murray was a scout in the UFHL back in those years in 2012, he would have had Braden Point long before anybody else. But interesting tie in there. And then just watching the way the playoff draft played out, because Ashley and the Monarchs were picking 7th overall. And knowing that she was a Tampa fan, I was thinking it was probably going to be Braden Point in the first round if he made it there. But being that Tampa's a perennial contender, I was a little bit surprised that he slid to 7th. And it's interesting when you look back at the results, because your current opponent, the Titans, actually took Steven Stamkos 2 spots ahead of you at 5th overall. And if you flip those two, it would be interesting to see how much closer that matchup would be if Titans had taken Braden Point instead of Steven Stamkos. But I wonder if both those were available. Did you have an inside scoop that Stamkos wasn't going to be ready for the playoffs? Did you have him kind of an asterisk or crossed off on your list as far as if he was there at 7th?
Let's just say he was not on my list at all. So I may or may not have had some insider information there, but yeah. And so I guess I was happy when I saw that Stamkos went. I thought yeah, okay, you can have him. So yeah, it was, and then like you said, Heiskanen, I didn't even really know the name, and he was, Al had told me, he said, take him as your number 1D or your first defenseman pick if you can. So he seems to be, I don't want to talk too much about him, but he does really have a good eye for, finding player talent and knowing who's going to be successful. And I think his track record shows that. He was with the LA Kings for close to 20 years, I think. And then they sort of cleaned house in the organization, but they ended up, so he was let go along with a bunch of other people, but they ended up winning the Stanley Cup, I think, a year or two after he was gone. And I know that didn't sit well with him, because when you develop the team and you pick the players and then they end up winning with that team, I think he feels a little bit like he missed out on that one. But he was, the World Junior team was super successful when he was there. I guess he would be their head scout there with that organization too. So he's got a couple of gold medals and some, I don't want to say swag, but some, good memorabilia from those years. And then Steve Yzerman reached out to him. They know each other, I think, just from Ontario. They're both from Ontario. And so he went down to Tampa, or, has the job there with Tampa. And he's done a good job there too, finding guys like even Tyler Johnson. He was undrafted. He found him, or I don't know if he was undrafted, but, he was another one of those guys that was kind of under the radar. And then he picked them up and he did great for them the first 2 seasons with them. So he's a good guy to have in my back pocket. Let's just say that.
Yeah, no doubt. And hopefully he gets a Stanley Cup ring to add to that collection of gold medals this season. And you're right, Tyler Johnson was undrafted out of WHL Spokane. So another great find there by Al Murray. And I know the Monarchs took Tyler Johnson, I believe, in the 5th round as well. And he's chipping in on this Klein Cup push. So a lot of help from the Tampa Bay Lightning players up and down your roster. You have 9 out of 23 are from Tampa Bay. So like you said, you really loaded up. And assuming they get past the Islanders, I think we can christen you the Klein Cup champion. And like Darren said, you can be the queen of the UFHL and parade up and down the streets of Regina with the physical Klein Cup.
Yeah, I want to say I'm looking forward to it, but let's hope I get that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we have a little ways to go, but you're looking as a favorite so far. So obviously the Green Mile, isn't that on Albert Street where they went up and down with the Grey Cup, I think, when the Riders won? So we'll might have to rename that street to the Ashley Murray Mile or something like that. If you do have the Klein Cup, which you will physically have in your hands, we do have this thing in our possession, have some inscriptions on it as well. So I guess my question to you would be, with the merch store almost up and running, there could be a lot of Monarch jerseys available. Do you think that there'd be a class in Regina that might be on a float wearing some of this merch, or how do you think that might play out?
I don't know how that will play out, but I do think it is, when Anthony showed me the mock-up jersey, I was showing everyone. I'm like, look at this. I'm like, this is so sweet. This is the team that I own, and this is what the jerseys look like. And a lot of people thought they looked great. So maybe I'll just have to get some people who I know to start wearing that merchandise and parade it around and go from there.
It would be cool because there'd always be a story to tell. Who are the Monarchs? What's that all about? Spread the word. That's the way I see it. And by the way, whatever help you can ascertain in your back pocket that you can go after, you're in it to win it. Isn't that a game on a game show network? I think I've seen In It to Win It. I would just say take it. Whatever help you can get, because there's a lot of people within the UFHL organization that know people are fairly high up in the sporting world. So if you have anything in your back pocket, grab it, run with it. And so far it's working well for you. So congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm hoping to, things are kind of slow right now because there's no hockey being played here, but I've told Al, I said, when you go, he's hoping to get overseas actually in October. I think they might be sending him over to Europe if things get going there. So I told him, I said, you just make sure you keep a little, list in your back pocket that you can send along to me too. So I will take advantage when possible. But I mean, that being said, I don't like to reach out to him too much because I do know, he works super hard at his job, and he's the type of guy that wants to be prepared for any question that comes his way. So if Brisebois goes to him and asks him a question, he doesn't want to have to say, I'll get back to you tomorrow. He wants to have that information ready. So he does work really hard. He's willing to help me, of course, but yeah, I feel bad reaching out to him and asking him questions on the daily. So I try to just keep it minimal. But
so he obviously knows what this is about. Does he say, UFHL, what are you talking about?
He thinks that the idea of it is great. He thinks that it's super, it's a fun way for people to tread the water, I guess, let's say that, in terms of scouting or even just owning your own franchise. So he has given me some good advice, and I don't know if I'm oblivious or what, but he said the central scouting reports, some people go based off central scouting reports. He said that, just be careful. Don't look too much to that, because he says a lot of times they're wrong. And then I said to Matt, don't they share the reports with, and he said, no, they don't share the reports, or they don't give their information to anyone because they want to keep that internal, right? And I thought, oh, okay. I'm like, I don't know. So it was interesting to hear that, just because it made me kind of rethink maybe what other people think about a certain player. And I think for him, he physically gets to like actually watch all of these people play. And then I think he has conversations with them too. So he knows a lot even just about their personality. So maybe they're a great player, but he just says, like they don't have the best attitude. He's a great player, but let's just say we don't want him for our organization. So that's interesting to know too, that, when people are scouted, of course, they're not just looking at physical play or, skill set. They're looking at the whole player in terms of personality too. So he thinks I think he likes following along, or, me sharing things and how it goes. And it was interesting when I was telling him about the future draft and how much money some of the players are going for. He kind of was like, oh man, like, that's not, that person got ripped off, or because it was an auction, right? And so it was just interesting to hear. He told me who I should be trying to get. Some of the people he told me I was trying to get were the ones that were going, I never remember the guy's name, but he's maybe a defenseman.
Owen Meyer.
Yes. So he says, if you can get him, try and get him. I'm like, okay. And again, I go on to this auction. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm not bidding on that. So I was hoping to get a couple of people cheap in the later rounds of that draft. But to be honest, I think there was 3 days that I had completely forgot about it. And the email from you, Larry, came out and said, oh, here's the recap of the draft day. And I just shook my head. I'm like, I think it was the same week that I was starting back to work. So I kind of, forgot about it. But I'm happy with what I got. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, you came away with 2 good prospects. You got potentially the Andrei Vasilevsky's successor or potential future goaltender for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Hugo Alnefelt. And then you also grabbed Josh Norris, who was one of the, I think he might have been the AHL Rookie of the Year, but one of the top prospects for the Ottawa Senators. So a couple good guys there. You already had Igor Afanasyev, who was a potential first-round pick last season, or was a first-round pick. So you got 3 good prospects to build around, and now you got Matt involved. You got, I know he was originally a franchise owner, and now he's a scout instead. So he can kind of follow in Al's footsteps, and maybe he can sneak a look at Al's list, which, like you said, it's interesting, the rankings, because the consolidated, the public rankings, the central scouting rankings, myself as a scout, all the lists look somewhat similar. But if you got to actually have a look at the 31 NHL Director of Scouting's lists, including Al Murray, you would be shocked at how much variance there is. It's not nearly as similar as what public perception is, even within the first round or the top 10, but certainly after you get into those rounds 2 to 7, there's a lot of different names on people's lists. That's why there's always surprises in the NHL draft, and nobody's been doing it better than Al Murray for the last 10, 20 years. And you look at Tampa Bay's feeder system. I seen a chart of it the other day. Almost 3/4 of their roster is drafted. There weren't a whole lot of trades involved to put together this team that is currently the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. So impressive work by Al. And one thing with Julien Brisebois is, like Ashley said, in years past, maybe the physical play was something Tampa didn't thrive in the playoffs because of the physical play. And they really paid a premium to add guys like Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. Both they had to give up first-round picks to get both those guys. And obviously they're in the playoffs, deep in the playoffs, because of some of that physical play and the intangibles that those bottom 6 guys bring. So I think an interesting season for Tampa, and certainly it relates back to the UFHL on the scouting side as well.
Yeah, I think that we went to see Tampa down in Vegas this past February, just pre-COVID, pre-shutdown. We saw them play in Vegas and then went down to Phoenix to see them as well. And that was just after the trade deadline. So Coleman and Goudreau were there. And I remember kind of thinking, like, who are these people? Or, and they weren't really jiving. But of course, you're not going to jive when you've been together with the team only a week or 2, and then you jump in and, play some games. So I do think they made some good decisions there. And Pat Maroon is another one that they acquired, and he's, got a physical presence. And they have, I just feel like there's 4 lines, like their depth is, it's fantastic. 4 lines that can compete. They've got their lines that are going to go out there and do the dirty work. And then they've got their finesse line too. And Vasi to back it all up. It's a complete package, that's for sure.
Yeah, and especially to have Pat Maroon brought a Stanley Cup ring. He's the only player left in the playoffs that won the Stanley Cup with St. Louis last year. So that experience, and he's a real character guy as well, off the ice, in the room. He's a good personality, I know, from his time in Edmonton and getting to know him a bit there. But certainly the fact Tampa Bay is so deep and so strong, the fact they're in the conference finals and Steven Stamkos has yet to play, arguably their franchise player, one of their best players. They've come this far without him playing at all in the playoffs. And the fact he hasn't, they ruled him out prior to the conference final that he wouldn't be playing at all in this round. So it makes it seem doubtful he'd be available for the Stanley Cup final as well, which is bad news for the Titans in the UFHL, but certainly just another testament to the depth and the roster that they've built, thanks largely to the feeder system of prospects within their own organization.
Yeah, I think that was, it was easy to see the other night when Point was out as well. I mean, the score was 5-3, but if you look at the shots on net, Tampa was right in it. It's not like, it was a fairly even game. And so I think that gave me some extra confidence, just thinking like, okay, yeah, this team isn't about just one or two star players. This is a full team contributing to, the final goal that they have in mind. And I think they're doing a good job of trying to get to where they're going.
I have my personal opinion and the in-depth knowledge that of the players and the scouting that you guys have and your father-in-law has, and every other scouting person that's associated with UFHL. It's way over my head and far more in depth than I can ever be. I have teams that I like for one reason or another. Sometimes, like you say, I'm a Boston Bruins fan. I'm not afraid to hide that. I even like Marchand, believe it or not. And I think I've met 3 people in my region that like Marchand. But it's more about teams for one reason or another. I like Tampa Bay because they're one of those Southern U.S. teams that does well, that has a great fan following, and some of them really struggle with that. So I like that hockey is loved in that area. I am rooting for Tampa Bay over the New York Islanders because I've never really been one to like the Islanders for one reason or another. But I like Trotz. I like Trotz. So when he was with Washington, he did such a great job. It's too bad he didn't stay there. But that's the only reason I might even kind of be happy sometimes when they score. But other than that, no, it's Tampa Bay all the way for me.
Yeah, so, Barry Trotz being a Dauphin, Manitoba guy from Manitoba. You're from Manitoba, Darren, and he's and John Cooper. I know it was a story during this series as well, but ironically, they both went to Notre Dame in Wilcox, Saskatchewan. So lots of prairie ties there between the two coaches in the Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah, absolutely, there sure is. So if we talk about obviously that's kind of meet the owner part of it, and actually this has been a great discussion, but you're also involved in the NHL UFHL playoff pool that we designed to hand out some free score tokens to the person that wins it. You're definitely in the running there. We started off with kind of a fun thing. It's pro versus the rookie, me versus Larry. I did my picks, Larry did his picks. In the very first round, I think I was kicking his butt. It very quickly reversed because I had really no concept of what I was doing. I picked the teams I liked, and so far they've all pretty much kind of crapped the bed. But I am in about 20th spot, and Larry is in number 1 spot. And I think when I last looked, I think Ashley's sitting in about 5th spot. So, man, you could be doing a sweep, as Larry says here, Ashley, on everything.
Like I said, it would be pretty awesome if I do sweep everything. When I was picking my teams for the NHL, I tried to think, not logically, but I did put some thought into them. I was trying to figure, okay, what do I think? And the one team from the last round that lost out, the Flyers, I had actually asked Matt, I said, what do you think? Because I always have to ask, even though I have gut, feelings, and my gut feeling was the Islanders because they were just, they were on sort of a hot streak there. They were doing really well. And Matt's like, oh, the Flyers, for sure, the Flyers. So I'm like, oh, okay. And I switched to the Flyers because I thought, yeah, you know what? Yeah, maybe the Islanders won't, make it past them. And so I put down the Flyers. And then afterwards, I said to Matt, I'm like, why would you say the Flyers? He's like, I don't know. I don't really pay attention. He's like, why'd you listen to me? I said, well, I don't know. So, but yeah, I find that the picking is, every time that the email comes out saying, okay, you got to get your next round picks in, I'm always, one of the last people to put them in. And it's just because I have a terrible time trying to decide who to pick. And I don't try to worry too much about the games because I find that's pretty hard to pick, but I'm not a good decision maker. So it has not been easy on me.
You say that, but then you look at the standings and you're right there. And you look at obviously in the conference finals and the cup round, prior to the playoffs, we picked bonus points, which was big. Obviously, if you got the right conference champions are 5 points each, and the right cup champion is 10 points each in both the UFHL and the NHL. And you're going strong there too, because obviously maybe went with your heart, but nonetheless, you're one of the few people that have Tampa Bay as the cup winner in the NHL, and obviously the Eastern Conference champion, looking promising for this round. And then you go over to the UFHL and much the same there. Yet it's looking like you're going to have the final matchup based on where we're at with fantasy points halfway through these conference finals. Your picks were your Monarchs over Strong Island, and Strong Island's leading the other conference final, and Monarchs have a commanding lead in this conference final. And obviously, I think it comes down to if Tampa gets past the Islanders, you'll certainly be the favorite in that matchup. If the Islanders win, it'll be very interesting because Strong Island does have a few Islanders players, Jordan Everly, Ryan Pulak, and Dallas is looking strong, so you'd still have Miro Heiskanen in the final potentially, but that would be there wouldn't be a whole lot of players left, and it would be an interesting final matchup. And actually, my predictions prior to the playoffs flipped that. I had Strong Island over the Monarchs as my final prediction, so we might have a bit of a rivalry going into the final round in the UFHL NHL playoff pool.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that Vegas, can beat out Dallas, because I think does Strong Island have a few Dallas people as well, or not?
Yeah, they have, I think, Blake Como, Jason Dickinson, and Corey Perry, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of hoping that if it's Tampa Vegas, I'm thinking that I probably got the Klein Cup there, but we'll see what happens.
I just had this instant kind of red light that went off in my head, expecting Cameron Turner to send you a nasty email that when you said that Vegas, you hope that Vegas beats the Stars, because I know where his head's at. I see it on Twitter all the time, but no, good guy. So obviously it's been a very, very busy week, as it always is. I know, Larry, you're, working 12-hour days pretty much for the UFHL. Last couple of weeks since our last podcast, open market, a lot of ads, a lot of trades happening. Actually, you said that you're kind of a wait and see kind of person, not sure what to do. I don't know how active you've been in this, Larry would know, but a lot of things, a lot of transactions going on, Larry.
Yeah, the open market's been really busy. So basically we auctioned off the top prospects, both for futures and the already drafted prospects in my own personal rankings or my opinion. So we went 3 draft years out. So 21, 22, and 2023 eligible kids as young as 15 years old. And then we auctioned off all sort of the first round picks and stuff from recent draft years and some of the sleepers that I had. And then starting September 1st, it was the open market, which any scout can add any prospect 15 to 25 years old at any time, first come, first serve. And we're 13 days into September, and we've had 306. There'll be over 310 ads by Monday morning on the 14th of September. So yeah, it's been very busy on the open market, kind of that 5 to 10 per day, and a lot of interesting names coming up. I know, again, circling back to Tampa Bay, one guy that I had circled as a sleeper that just missed my cut for the futures auction was a college forward named Sammy Walker. I think he could be another steal in the years to come for Tampa. And he lingered quite a while on the open market, but he did finally, somebody added him a couple days ago. So that was an interesting Lightning prospect that was sort of hanging around there. There's a couple more still that Matt might circle back on for Tampa now that he's a scout. But it's been fun to watch, and that's what I enjoy most about the UFHL and UFFS platform is the scouting side. And being a scout at heart, I've got my own list running as to if I was a scout in the game, who I would be adding on the open market. And there's still about 30 or so names that I'm quite fond of that I would be willing to take a chance on that are out there. And every day I seem to find a new name too. So it's interesting for me to see which of our 32 scouts and counting find these prospects after I sort of note their names. So I'm enjoying the open market. And the nice thing about the open market is it's not an auction. It's finders keepers. With the auctions, all the prospects are sort of put in front of you and you get to bid on them, and wealth can kind of come into play. But with the open market, it's literally first come, first serve. So if you find the kid, you get the kid, and they all come at the same price, which is $20 US, pretty cheap. So it's real world scouting on the blockchain for the UFHL, and it's a lot of fun. So the open market's been great the last couple of weeks.
Any big strategy there? So I guess Matt is scouting for you, Ashley. Are you on his case? Come on, what'd you do today? What'd you get for me? What are you doing? What's on your list? Or do you just leave him alone?
Well, it's more of I would probably say, hey, you take this guy, but I don't know who to take. So it'd probably be me asking Al telling me, and then me telling Matt. But when I told him to register as a scout, there was a big miscommunication there. So I forwarded him the email saying, okay, this, open market starts tomorrow. You're going to send a list. You need to send a list of send as many as you want, 200 players. Ask your dad, who are the people who he would pick? And Matt opens the email and he looks at the list of people that are already drafted that were in the open market. So it was a list don't pick these people. I'm at work. I get an email from Matt. He's like, okay, it's done. And I open up the email. I'm looking at some of these names. I'm like, geez, those sound kind of familiar, but I don't have time, right? So I close the email, and then he messages me back, an hour or so later. And I don't know who it was that emailed him, but they're like, yeah, you picked people that are already taken. So then he had to message me, and he's like, I'm really sorry. And I just kind of shook my head and was like, whatever.
He's not getting his bonus.
No, that's what I said. I said, well, there's definitely no bonus coming your way. So yeah, it's kind of a funny story. And like I said, he's kind of a funny guy, Matt, because, he's grown up watching the hockey, or grown up kind of in the hockey world, I guess. But he was never a Kings fan. He didn't really, I've always said, who's your team? And he was like, I don't know. I didn't really have a team. And I'm like, how do you not have a team? And he's just not a big sports fan. He doesn't watch. If in our household, if somebody's watching sports, it's me. He will watch, but most of the time, if there's a Tampa game on, he wouldn't try and rearrange his schedule around it. If I could, I would. For example, my son had hockey Friday night. I said to my husband, can you take him to hockey? He's like, yeah, I'll take him. So then I got to stay home and watch the game. And it's not that he doesn't care. He just, he just kind of goes with it. He's, of course, now certainly following, very interested because of playoffs. But yeah, and I said, well, I think he did say you never really wanted to get too attached to a team because you didn't know where's dad moving to next, or, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I mean, I don't think Al has any plans on retiring anytime soon. He says he'd like to, but he likes what he does. And so I'm interested to see if my son will continue to cheer for Tampa. I have to admit, I'm a bandwagon jumper. So my team that I originally cheered for was the Red Wings. Growing up, I always played hockey, but I didn't really watch too much of it. But it was the 95-96 Stanley Cup playoff run, I guess, for the Wings. And that, I think, was the first year that they won before kind of going on their, 10-year playoff Stanley Cup runs there. But my dad was just watching the playoffs, and I think he was cheering for Detroit. He's not even a Detroit fan, but was just, Steve Yzerman, we're going to cheer for him. So I sort of jumped that bandwagon because they won that year. And then I started following them. I was getting, a little bit older. I was 10 when they won. So then started getting a little bit older, following hockey a little closer. Big fan of them, huge fan of Datsuk, probably still one of my favorite players to this day. And then Matt and I got together, and his dad was hired by Tampa. So for the first few years we were together, I was still cheering for Detroit. And it was kind of fun because we had a bit of a rivalry going. They ended up playing each other in playoffs a few times. But then Detroit, they kind of had that run, and then it was time for their team to just sort of go into that rebuilding phase. And they just weren't as fun to watch. They didn't have, players either retired or just the players that I liked weren't no longer there. So at that same time, Tampa started to sort of take off. I'm like, well, I guess I might as well cheer for Tampa, right? I have a good excuse to cheer for them. So here I am. So who knows, maybe in 15 years I'll be cheering for a different team, but we'll see.
Nothing wrong with being a bandwagon jumper. There's a lot of those people I've grown up with and know still today. So no problem with that. So a loaded question here for you, Ashley, and I didn't give you any heads up on this question, and it was something I asked Cameron, and I actually stole it from Cameron from one of his podcasts too. But if you had the opportunity to go for dinner with any athlete, doesn't have to be hockey, could be any athlete, alive or dead, who would you take to dinner?
You know what? That's funny that you should ask that, because I actually did have the opportunity to have lunch with Steve Yzerman. And Steve Yzerman probably would be on that, that top of my list there. But he was in Regina to go watch the Moose Jaw Warriors back when, as you mentioned earlier, when they were looking at, who were they looking for? Morgan Riley on the Warriors. And then Al had pointed out, so Matt told me, I've got a surprise for you. I'm going to pick you up from work and we're going somewhere. And I got thinking, like, what is this surprise? Wouldn't tell me. And for some reason, I'm like, am I meeting Steve Yzerman? He's like, no, like, what would Steve Yzerman be doing in Regina? I'm like, well, I don't know. And then about a week, because that was Memorial Cup time, a few days later, a friend of mine was like, I think you are going to meet Steve Yzerman. He was in Moose Jaw tonight. There was an article in, the Moose Jaw Times about it. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I asked Matt, and Matt's like, no, again. So he picked me up from work the one day, and we get in the car and we drive over to his parents' house for lunch, and his mom is making sandwiches and doing this and that. And I'm still sitting there trying to figure out what's going on. I'm nervous. Anyway, the door opens and Al comes walking in and he's talking just like nothing. And someone walks in behind him, and sure enough, it's Steve Yzerman. So I'm in like, starstruck / but I'm like, okay, play it cool. Like, you can't, this is just normal everyday stuff for Al for sure, but Matt even mentioned being a kid, Bob McKenzie would call their house, or, Matt's met Wayne Gretzky. So it's just like the norm sort of for them. But yeah, so he walked in and they're like, oh yeah, and this is Ashley. And, I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. And so we sat and didn't really talk hockey. And again, I was trying to just play it cool, but threw in some hockey questions there, got a picture with him, and then asked him to sign my jersey. Matt brought, I think it was a Team Canada jersey, the Olympic one from the 2010 Olympics, I guess. So he got that one signed. And so, yeah, it was a pretty neat experience. But I guess probably Wayne Gretzky would be my other one, to be honest. Like, to sit down and have an actual dinner and talk hockey, or, yeah. And if there was a newer aged, I have to go with the Canadians, probably either Braden Point or Steven Stamkos. Be interesting to hear, what their take is on multi-sport or versus single sport type things. We try to keep our son involved. Sorry, my dog's here chewing on a bone. We try and keep our son involved in a bunch of different sports. We don't want him to just be one direction at this point in time. And I think that that's what, most of the younger people would say. So, but yeah, just have a conversation. What was it like? What did you have to do? How'd you get to where you were? Yeah.
Those are all good choices. Actually, Wayne Gretzky, I was never an Oilers fan. I'm one of those people that I always, when a team has a run, like the Islanders did in the 80s too, where you win 4 or 5 times in a row, like the Oilers did as well, and nobody can beat you, I tend to cheer against them, actually. But I always loved Wayne Gretzky and appreciate him. So I like that choice. Yzerman too, another great one. That would be a phenomenal experience. Did you eat? Were you able to eat?
I was able to eat, yes. Yeah, like I said, it was just because he's just a normal guy. Like, to himself, he's probably thinking like, yeah, Regina, I don't know, I guess people know me. He actually, I think Al had said he loved his time in Tampa because no one knew him. And then he's now back in Detroit. But he says in Detroit, you can't go anywhere without people. They were out for dinner maybe after a game, and Steve Yzerman must have paid. And so the waitress came and said, is there a Mr. Yzerman or something? And all the guys at the table were like, yeah, there's this guy over here. And, if it was in Detroit, it'd be here, like, you'd know who he was. And But yeah, it was kind of neat just to talk to him. I mean, he's just a regular guy with family, and I think during that season it was a lockout, and so I remember asking him about the lockout and what his thoughts were on it and things like that. But yeah, it was a neat experience. So my son, actually, he's had lots of opportunities, more so than myself. He goes down, or has gone down a couple times to Tampa with my father-in-law for January meetings. So they have January meetings every year. So my son's gone twice down with him, and he gets to go to like their pregame skates and their practices just to watch, and gets to tour the dressing room and meet the players and things like that. So if it continues, I guess, it'll be nothing too special for him when he comes across those athletes. But so it's pretty cool. We do have a pretty cool, more so for the kids. And I think like Matt growing up, it's a pretty unique situation to be in. There's definitely a downside though. I think like my father-in-law's gone, 275 days of the year in a regular year. So there are people that are like, wow, that's the best thing ever. He's like, yeah, people think it's great to be going over to Europe for weeks at a time. He's like, but the only thing I do is sit in a hockey rink. He says, and the hockey rinks all look the same. I'm not going to, he's not touring around Europe. Of course, there's off time, but it's, a lot of travel for sure for what he does. But
the grass is always greener on the other side. I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like Larry, can't go anywhere in Kelowna without being recognized as a UFFS superstar. Hey, Larry?
Something like that. I can tell myself that for sure. But it is like Ashley said, being a scout, it's not as glamorous as people think. And Al can attest to that even at the highest level. You do get a bit of a glory when Braden Point's lighting it up and the front runner for a Conn Smythe trophy, and you found him and stole him in the third round. But there's a lot of cold nights spent in Moose Jaw and driving back and forth watching those kids, and a lot of hard miles put in year round. Like she said, 275 days on the road. And I know for myself, as an aspiring scout, the amount of time you do spend watching, researching, everything else, it's a grind. It's a full-time job in itself, and you got to really have the passion to do it, because especially if you're leaving a family behind and stuff, it's hard work, and it's not as glamorous as it might seem, even though you are part of an NHL organization.
Almost out of time on this podcast, so and I know Ashley has places to be and things to do. So, quick couple of important dates coming up here in the UFHL. Larry, October is going to be pretty exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, especially with the UFHL entry auction, the inaugural entry auction, which will be the 2020 NHL draft class. Whoever the first and second round picks are from 1 to 62 in the NHL draft that'll be held on October 6th and 7th. Then on October 10th, our franchises will be bidding on those first and second round picks, all 62 prospects. And certainly the Monarchs and Ashley, knock on wood, will have a little extra money to spend there on prospects, and to circle back on the open market if she does capture the Klein Cup, and certainly if she also prevails in the UFHL NHL playoff pool. There could be a nice little purse there as well to spend money on sort of building out her protected list for the Monarchs. But all 31 franchises are looking forward to the UFHL entry auction and seeing how that works on October 10th. And following that, the next day we'll have another open market draft for the scouts. So any of the, if by chance first and second round picks aren't bid on during the entry auction, they would go to that open market draft. But more than likely the first and second rounders will be purchased. So that open market draft on Sunday, October 11th, will be for all the 3rd to 7th round picks from the 2020 NHL draft, as well as any undrafted prospects. Every year there's guys that go undrafted that are interesting prospects that could be claimed there in the open market draft. So that's the next real big weekend. Although as soon as the playoffs are over in the UFHL and the NHL, the morning after the cup is awarded, transactions open up a lot more. On the open market, scouts can start grabbing older free agent players. Obviously, franchises can start doing buyouts, waiver claims. As you mentioned, the trade market's been hot. There's been a few trades every day, some blockbusters, but certainly there's you can't trade any players that are currently in the NHL playoffs. And a little spoiler alert, Braden Point's on the move in the UFHL, but that trade can't be announced until after the Tampa Bay Lightning are out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But there's quite a few in the hopper that are agreed to in principle and will be announced and approved following the Stanley Cup playoffs once these final 4 teams are eliminated. So there'll be lots of trades, another auction, another draft, and then following that, we have the owners' meetings throughout October as well, where Ashley and her peers will sort of help us make some decisions going forward to the start of next season, which our calendar year start will be November 1st. So there'll be a lot of decisions made in October regarding the future of the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, and exciting times ahead.
And of course, you don't have to take notes, Ashley, because you can just watch your email inbox. There'll be messages from Larry. He does a great job of keeping everybody up to date, the GMs and the owners. And of course, there's always the Telegram chat rooms as well, where you can find all of that stuff out. And if you ever want more information, Larry's always available. Don't want to forget about the tentative October 31st date where we launch on the Zilliqa blockchain, which is going to run our entire platform. Very excited about that. It's going to be great, and it's going to be extremely functional for the owners, GMs, and everybody else involved in the UFFS. So want to thank anyone who's out there and joining us today. Great to have you join us, Ashley, the second owner on our podcast. Enjoy the Klein Cup, Stanley Cup playoffs for everything that's left there, and good luck to the Monarchs.
Thanks very much. I want to make sure that I mention anybody who is thinking about getting started, don't hesitate, join in. Everybody who, is the founders does a great job of filling you in, helping you out along the way. So if you feel like it's too complicated, don't understand things, give it a shot. You won't regret it.
We're pretty good at holding people's hands, and we do have a couple of franchises for sale. So anybody, as you say, Ashley, out there interested, want more information, want to talk to owners like Ashley, I think everybody's available, and we can help you out. If you're hearing us for the first time and want more information, you can find us all on any social media platform. We're out there. I'm not going to list them all. And of course, our website's a great place to start, www.uffsports.com. Larry's information as well as there. Just want to say farewell until next time from Ashley, Larry, and myself, Darren Bates at UFF Sports, where you own the game.